I refused to sign a loan for my son-in-law who had been using my money as an ATM for years, and it had finally worn me thin. My daughter, whom I had supported for most of her life, for her wedding, for her house, for emergencies big and small, coldly turned to me and said, "Then don't expect to stay here long." My heart ached at the coldness in her voice. The very voice I once held close when she was a child. The voice I comforted when she had nightmares. And now, this. I couldn't take it anymore. I decided I'd leave. It wasn't just about the loan, it wasn't just about the money they'd been constantly asking for, no matter how many times I said I was tired. It wasn't just about the years I'd spent as their unpaid financial backer. It was about the absence of gratitude. It was about the expectation that my sacrifices, my hard-earned money, my years of living frugally, should have been part of some perpetual cycle that could never end. No matter how much I gave, they always wanted more. So, with a heart full of resignation, I packed a bag, grabbed my coat, and walked out. I couldn't wait any longer for them to realize their mistake. They begged me to come back later, but it was too late. I was done. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are listening in the comments. As I pour this story out into the open, the clink of dinner plates rang in my ears as I arranged them around the mahogany table. Their once cherished familiarity, now distant. The house felt different, not like home. It was a place where warmth, once abundant, felt forced. March evenings in Seattle still carried winter's bite, a reminder of the chill in the air outside. But, inside the dining room was warm, almost suffocating. Too warm, maybe. Mark, my son-in-law, had that look in his eyes again, the one that always came when he had something to sell, something he believed was going to change everything, the one that made his eyes light up like a child on Christmas morning. His fingers danced across his tablet screen with excitement. "Alex, perfect timing," he said, swiping the device toward me. Charts and graphs lit up the screen, their blue glow casting an eerie light across the kitchen. "I've been working on something incredible." Sarah, my daughter, paused in her steps, holding a serving bowl of mashed potatoes in midair, waiting for me to catch up. "Show him, honey," she said, her voice edged with pride, as though she were proud of this new project, the one that would solve all their problems. I continued setting forks around the table, my movements mechanical after 5 years of living here. The family photos on the sideboard caught my peripheral vision, reminding me of all the memories that filled this house. Sarah's wedding, the kids' graduations, those Thanksgiving dinners where we gathered around the table, all the celebrations, all the milestones. 15 years of memories, and 15 years of checks written, mortgages paid, and emergencies covered. "This is it, Alex." Mark's voice pulled me back from the memories. There was that same entrepreneurial confidence I'd grown to recognize in him. "My IT startup, we've got the software platform ready. Beta testing complete. I just need backing for the servers and office space." His tablet tilted toward me again, as numbers jumped out at me, glowing like a neon sign. $200,000 initial investment, he said. Projected returns, market analysis. My chest tightened, and my hands trembled slightly. This was it, the ask. My heart sank. How many times had I supported them, invested in their dreams, written checks to help their business ideas come to life, only to see them falter? "I know you've always supported us," Mark continued, leaning forward. "This time, it's different. It's not a loan. It's an investment in our future, Sarah's future, the kids' future." His words were full of hope, full of that same faith he always had in his plans, in his ventures. I felt a familiar tension rising in my chest, a tension I'd learned to suppress for years. "I've been helping financially for 15 years, I said, my voice sounding rougher than I intended. "Mark, I'm tired of being your ATM." My words hung in the air, heavier than I'd imagined. Silence fell over the room like a thick blanket, suffocating the conversation. The serving bowl of mashed potatoes trembled slightly in Sarah's hands. Mark's tablet screen dimmed to black. Sarah's face, once full of pride, transformed before my eyes. Color drained from her cheeks and then, almost immediately, flushed back in angry red patches. "Then don't expect to stay here much longer." Her words came like a slap. The fork in my hand slipped and clattered against the hardwood floor. "What did you just say?" I couldn't believe my ears. The room felt smaller, like it was closing in on me. Sarah's voice, when it came again, was cold and cutting. "You heard me?" She set the bowl down with a deliberate force, the mashed potatoes sloshing over the edge, spilling onto the table. "If you're not part of this family's success, maybe you shouldn't be part of this family at all." Mark reached for her arm, trying to calm the situation, but she shook him off. "No, I'm tired of tiptoeing around this. We've given him a home for 5 years. 5 years. And now, when we need him, really need him, he turns his back on us." Her words stung. The room seemed to spin around me. Sarah, the girl I raised, the girl I loved, was now telling me I didn't belong. The daughter who had once begged me to move in with her after Helen died, was now telling me to leave. My legs went weak. "Sarah, please," I said, my voice trembling. "I didn't mean ... Save it," she snapped, her back to me now as she marched to the kitchen. her heels clicking against the floor like gunshots. Dinner's getting cold. I stood there in the quiet, my heart racing, trying to process what had just happened. The fork lay where it had fallen, catching the dim light from the chandelier overhead, almost mocking me. My hands shook as I reached for the chair, sitting down with a heavy thud. My chest felt tight, and my breathing shallow. Mark muttered something about checking emails, excusing himself from the situation, retreating to his office. The room felt emptier now, the air heavier. I couldn't move. It was as if I was glued to my chair, rooted in place by the shock, the disbelief. Behind me, I could hear Sarah moving around the kitchen, clattering dishes together, the sharp sound of plates being stacked aggressively. Every noise she made felt like a message to me, a message that said I no longer belonged. My legs were unsteady as I finally forced myself to stand, my body betraying me as I walked toward the stairs. Each step echoed, louder than it should have been, making the house feel like a cavern. I reached my bedroom door and closed it behind me with a soft click, retreating into the silence. The photos on my nightstand seemed to mock me now. Sarah at 16, radiant in her prom dress, smiling like the world was hers to conquer. Sarah at 33, holding newborn Emma, that look of exhaustion, joy, and hope in her eyes. Sarah, last Christmas, arms wrapped around Mark, both of them grinning at the camera, oblivious to what was coming. I stared at them, my hand still clutching the doorframe. When had gratitude turned into expectation? When had my help, my sacrifices, my money, become something they thought they were entitled to? Outside my window, the Seattle skyline twinkled in the distance. The lights of the city glittered in the cold March evening, almost mocking the warmth. I had once known the world outside was still, untouched by the chaos inside the house. Somewhere, families were still having dinners. Normal dinners, dinners where love didn't come with price tags. And then there was me alone in my room, contemplating my next move. Hours passed in silence, save for the muffled voices downstairs. Sarah and Mark arguing, their words indistinct, but their anger clear as day. I couldn't make out what they were saying, but I didn't need to. I could hear the venom in their voices, the blame they were placing on me for their failures. The digital clock on my nightstand flashed 9:17 p.m., and I finally found the strength to move again. I opened the filing cabinet, the same one that had been with me since Helen's death. It had become a companion of sorts, a steady presence in my life, something that had always helped me maintain order and structure. I had learned this from the military, and it had stayed with me through the years of marriage. Every receipt, every check stub, every bank statement, all carefully categorized and stored. Away, I pulled the bottom drawer open, the metal runners protesting with a tired screech. I didn't flinch. Financial records. I pulled out the thickest folder, marked in neat handwriting. Sarah and Mark to 15 years. Inside, papers rustled. As I spread them across the desk, bank statements, canceled checks, transfer receipts, a paper trail of 15 years' worth of help that had somehow transformed into an obligation I could no longer carry. The first receipts were from the wedding. June 2009, the venue, the caterer, the photographer, all those things that go into a wedding. I had signed the bottom line for $50,000, thinking it was worth it to see my daughter marry the man she loved. I told Helen, she deserves a fairy tale, I whispered to myself. My fingers moved across the calculator like they had 1,000 times before, the soft beep of the keys filling the quiet room. Monthly mortgage payments, car payments, medical bills. Every time I helped them, every check I wrote, the total amount grew. I made the calculations, pen scratching across the notepad, numbers climbing higher. $200 a month for the mortgage. Multiplied by 12 months, multiplied by the 5 years they'd been in the house. The total came to $252,000. Car payments for Sarah's SUV, Mark's sedan, when his old car broke down. Insurance premiums when their credit couldn't get them a decent rate. A habit I'd picked up from Helen, always keep records, Alex. Each check was photographed before mailing. A small habit, but one that had served me well over the years. The numbers grew. Emma's college tuition, John's technical school, Christmas gifts, birthday celebrations, emergency repairs when their hot water heater flooded the basement, medical bills when Mark's health insurance lapsed, vacation funds for their anniversary trip to Hawaii, Sarah's root canal surgery. The expenses piled on. The tally grew. $300,000, $350,000, $400,000. My fingers moved across the calculator. Keys. Faster now. The total reached $487,000, nearly $500,000 over 15 years. I stared at the number, my breath catching in my throat. That was it. Nearly $500,000. And for what? For being taken for granted. For being the ATM they thought would always be there. The phone on my nightstand seemed to watch me. I picked it up and dialed. Wells Fargo's 24-hour customer service line answered on the second ring. This is Alex Miller. Account number. I recited the digits I had memorized over the years, repeating them like a mantra. I need to cancel automatic transfers to account ending in 4739. The customer service agent on the other end was polite, professional. I'll be happy to help with that, Mr. Miller, may I ask the reason for canceling these transfers? My reflection stared back at me in the darkened window. Gray hair, tired eyes, but something had changed in the set of my jaw. I'm tired of being taken for granted, I said quietly. Cancel the transfers. It only took 20 minutes to get everything sorted. When I hung up the phone, I returned to the desk, where the final tally stared back at me. $487,000, nearly $500,000 that had flowed from my life, my savings, my hard-earned money, to a daughter who seemed to think I owed her more. The power of attorney documents lay at the bottom of the folder. Sarah's name neatly printed, granting her access to my accounts for emergencies. My signature was there, from 3 years ago when I was recovering from knee surgery and couldn't visit the bank as often. My hands trembled slightly as I fed the papers into the shredder, watching as they turned into strips. Legal authority turned into confetti, scattered and meaningless. For the first time in hours, I smiled. Tomorrow would bring changes. Tonight, though I would sleep better than I had in months, the satisfaction of control, of making a decision for myself, felt like a weight lifted from my chest. I opened my laptop. Seattle apartment rentals, downtown high-rises with city views, quiet neighborhoods with easy bus routes, one-bedroom apartments where the only obligation would be to myself. The house around me creaked and settled, but I barely noticed I was already planning my escape. Friday morning sunlight streamed through the windows of my new downtown apartment, casting long geometric shadows across the hardwood floors. I took a deep breath, inhaling the calm, untainted air that filled the space. Kate Anderson, the realtor, gestured toward the kitchen with professional enthusiasm. Perfect for one person, Mr. Miller, she said, her voice bright and eager. Walking distance to Pike Place Market, bus routes to everywhere you'd want to go. I nodded, barely listening to her pitch, my thoughts drifting elsewhere. The apartment felt right. Clean, minimalist, quiet. It was mine. It was my space. A fresh start. The park across the street has benches where residents like to read, she added, pointing toward the view through the living room window. Very peaceful, especially after years of chaos. I smiled faintly. I'll take it, I said, cutting her off before she could finish her spiel. Kate paused mid-sentence, her smile faltering slightly. Don't you want to see the bedroom? The bathroom, she asked, her voice still hopeful but now tinged with doubt. I looked at her, a faint smirk on my lips. I need peace more than square footage. I pulled out my checkbook, writing the deposit without hesitation. It felt almost liberating, like an act of defiance. She seemed to understand and didn't press further. 2 hours later, I sat in my truck outside the Bellevue house. The familiar driveway, the old oak tree by the sidewalk, it all seemed so far away now. Sarah's car was gone. Her Friday shift at the cafe wouldn't end until 3 o'clock, so I had time. Mark's sedan was missing too, likely at his co-working space, chasing yet another one of his big ideas. The house key felt heavier than usual in my hand as I unlocked the front door. Moving through rooms that had been my home for the past 5 years, I made quick, decisive decisions. The photo albums from my marriage, mine. My military service medals, kept on the bedroom dresser, mine. The leather recliner Helen had bought me for my 70th birthday. They'd grown used to its presence, but it was theirs now. The piano in the living room, Helen's pride and joy. Sarah had claimed it after the funeral, said it would be perfect for when Emma brought her kids around someday. Let her keep those dreams. At noon, the moving crew arrived, a young man with gentle eyes leading the charge. Mr. Miller, we have you down for a one-bedroom move. Senior discount applied. I handed him a handwritten list. Everything marked with blue tape goes. Everything else stays. What about the piano, sir? He asked, glancing toward the corner. Where it sat, it's a beautiful piece. I paused, looking at the piano one last time. Leave it, I said. It belongs to someone else now. The hardest part was Helen's jewelry box. Sarah had insisted I keep it, told me maybe someday I'd want to give pieces to Emma or future granddaughters-in-law, but those conversations would happen on my terms now, or maybe not at all. I left a simple note on the kitchen table. No grand explanations, no heartfelt goodbyes. Just a short message, neatly typed, that summed up everything I'd been feeling. Sarah and Mark, I've moved out. The keys are on the counter. You'll find I've canceled my financial support. You wanted independence from my expectations? I'm giving you independence from my assistance. Don't contact me until you're ready to apologize. My new address will remain private until then. Alex? My phone rang as I was signing paperwork for the last of the apartment documents. Sarah's name flashed on the screen. I let it ring out, then deleted her number from my contacts, just in case. I was done. My first night in the new apartment was one of the most peaceful I'd had in months. The quiet was palpable. I ordered pizza for dinner, something I hadn't done in forever, and ate at my own pace. No interruptions, no demands, no expectations. The pizza was warm, the soda was cold, and I could enjoy it without worrying about someone asking for more. I finished the meal slowly, savoring each bite, as though each chew was a small victory. Tomorrow, I'd explore my neighborhood, maybe find a good coffee shop, or check out the library. But tonight, I had my own space. No one was expecting anything from me except a tip for delivery. The next morning, the sun rose slowly over Seattle. It filtered through the blinds of my new apartment, casting soft shadows on the walls. I felt a sense of calm, a peace I hadn't known in a long time. I was free. As I sat at my desk, I started to look up apartments. Online, the listings were endless. There were the downtown high-rises with city views, quiet neighborhoods with bus routes to everywhere I might want to go. I was spoiled for choice, but I knew it didn't matter. I didn't need much. A small, quiet place where I could start over, where no one would expect anything from me. That was all I wanted. The house behind me, the one I'd spent so many years in, was nothing more than a memory now. It was no longer my responsibility, no longer my burden. I hadn't realized how heavy that weight had been until it was gone at 9:30 a.m. I walked into the bank for the first time in years. The revolving doors opened with a soft swoosh as I entered, and the marble floors greeted me with the quiet elegance that had always been the hallmark of places like this. I felt out of place here. I wasn't used to walking into these places, dressed in a suit and tie, feeling like I belonged. But today was different. Today, I was in control. My appointment with James Clark was on time. I arrived early, as always, prepared. Mr. Miller, James greeted me, standing from behind his mahogany desk. His gray suit commanded respect. I have your account information pulled up. We settled into his office, overlooking Pike Street. The windows stretched from floor to ceiling, giving me a view of the busy street below. Commuters rushed by, their heads down, focused on their responsibilities, unaware of the change happening right above them. You want to cancel the automatic transfer of $4,200 monthly? James asked, his eyebrows slightly raised in surprise. That's been running for 5 years without interruption? Yes, I replied firmly. I didn't need to explain myself. I had made up my mind. I pulled out the folder I'd organized over the weekend and placed it in front of him. I'd like to review exactly how much has been transferred in total, I said. James typed swiftly into his computer, his fingers moving across the keys like he'd done this 1,000 times before. The numbers began to climb across his monitor, a cascade of figures that seemed to mirror my growing frustration over the years. The total is $487,000, he said, his voice trailing off slightly as the number registered. $487,000 over 15 years. The amount stunned him, but it didn't surprise me. I'd known it all along. I had kept the records. I had paid attention. Let them pay for their own house, I said, the finality of my words hanging in the air. By noon, I was sitting across from Robert Fisher in his law office 3 blocks away. His secretary had squeezed me in after I mentioned asset protection and estate planning in the same breath. Lawyers loved urgency when it came with billable hours. Robert spread documents across his conference table like a general planning his strategy. The thick stacks of legal paperwork sat in front of me, each one filled with clauses designed to protect what remained of my savings. Asset protection at your age is wise, Robert said, his voice calm, professional. Irrevocable trusts, homestead exemptions, offshore considerations if necessary. I nodded, the seriousness of what was being discussed not lost on me. My financial world had been open to manipulation for far too long. I want to protect what's left from any claims my daughter might make, I said quietly, my voice steady. Of course, Robert replied, his pen moving over the pages. Family disputes can get complicated. The best defense is proper structure before problems arise. The day seemed to stretch on, but I wasn't in a rush. I signed the documents with steady hands, each one representing another lock, another barrier between my remaining assets and the people who thought they were entitled to them. Nevada Asset Protection Trusts, beneficiary designations, executive appointments. Emma's name appeared throughout the paperwork as the primary beneficiary. She had always been honest with me, never demanding, never manipulating. She was the only one who had remained true. Emma gets everything through the trust, Robert explained, as I signed page after page. Your daughter has no legal claim to these assets once the trust is established. The notary public arrived at 3 o'clock, a stern woman who verified signatures with military precision. Each stamp of the notary seal felt like another lock clicking into place. My financial fortress was becoming impregnable. I could almost breathe, a little easier now. Walking back to my apartment, I carried a leather portfolio filled with certified copies of the documents. The weight of it felt lighter than the mortgage payments I had been shouldering for years. My phone buzzed as I climbed the stairs to my unit. A text message from an unknown number. Dad, it's Mark. We need to talk. Coming by tonight at 7. I deleted the message without replying. Let him come. I had legal documents now, and something even more valuable, the knowledge that I could say no without any consequences that mattered. That evening, I sat on the couch in my new apartment, flipping through a book I had been meaning to read. The doorbell rang at precisely 7 p.m., the sound of it cutting through the quiet of my new home. It felt like an intrusion, but I was prepared. I opened the door without hesitation, and there stood Mark, holding a bouquet of yellow roses. The same peace offering he had brought the night he demanded money for his startup. Alex, he began, trying to sound conciliatory. No, you're upset. I understand. We've had our differences, but this is important. We need to talk. Come in, I said, stepping aside to let him in. I didn't want to be rude, but I wasn't interested in his explanation either. Mark entered, scanning the apartment with disappointment clearly written across his face. Nice place. Very minimalist, he remarked, his tone carrying a hint of condescension. I closed the door behind him, maintaining my distance. Sarah sent you, I asked, my voice flat. She's upset after what happened Wednesday. She didn't mean what she said about you leaving, Mark said, settling onto my second-hand couch. He crossed his legs with the same confidence he used when pitching his ideas to investors. I stood there, arms crossed, and looked him over. When did you last remember my birthday? I asked, my tone level, almost casual. His face faltered. What? My birthday. When did you last remember it without Sarah reminding you? Mark shifted, caught off guard, but tried to recover. That's not really the issue here, Alex. We're talking about the family's future. His words held a certain urgency, but I wasn't moved. I had heard it all before. February 14th, I said, leaning back slightly, my voice even same day as Valentine's Day. Hard to forget, you'd think, but you have for 12 years running. Mark's hands gestured vaguely, but I saw the cracks beginning to show in his carefully constructed demeanor. Alex, we're discussing something much more important here. We're talking about my business, my future, Sarah's future, the kids' future, and what about my future? I asked, my voice quiet but firm. What about my independence? You've taken everything from me for years, and now you want more. Mark stood abruptly, pacing to my dining table. You can't just abandon us. We have plans. We have people depending on us. You owe us. No, I said sharply. I don't owe you anything. Not anymore. My words hung in the air between us, heavy and final. Mark's frustration grew, his voice rising. You'll regret this, Alex. You'll see. When you're sitting here alone, and we're successful, you'll wish you had helped us. I'm already sitting here alone. Mark, I replied, my voice calm. The difference is, I chose it. Mark grabbed his jacket, frustration boiling over, but I didn't. Let him continue. Find another ATM, I said, turning toward the door. Don't expect to hear from me again until you're ready to respect me. Mark slammed the door behind him, his frustration palpable, his anger spilling out into the hallway. Through the window, I watched him storm toward his BMW, the sleek car moving like an extension of his impatience. I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel sorry. The only thing I felt was relief, the kind that comes with knowing that I was finally standing up for myself, for once putting my needs before everyone else's demands. As I stood there watching him drive off, a small part of me almost wished for things to have been different, but the bigger part of me knew I had done the right thing. I had to let go. The evening fell silent again, the noise of family arguments and desperate pleas replaced by a calm I had not known in years. There was a knock at the door, just after 9 p.m., and when I peered through the peephole, I saw Sarah standing there. Her face was drawn, eyes red from crying, and her posture sagged, as if the weight of the world rested on her shoulders. She looked like a woman broken. I hesitated for a moment, torn between the anger I felt toward her and the love I once had for her. I opened the door, but I didn't invite her in. What do you want? Sarah? I asked, keeping my voice steady. She held up a white pastry box, as if it were some kind of offering. I brought you your favorite apple pie from Morrison's Bakery, she said, her voice trembling, just like Mom used to make. She stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, her eyes scanning my new apartment, taking in the minimalist decor, the simple furnishings, the life I had chosen for myself. Remember how she'd bake one every Sunday after church? Sarah asked, her voice trailing off as if she were trying to stir up old memories, trying to get me to see her as the daughter who needed help, who needed her father. I didn't respond right away. The smell of the cinnamon and apples from the pie filled the room, but it didn't trigger nostalgia. Instead, it reminded me of how much I had sacrificed for her, and how little that sacrifice had been appreciated. Coffee? I offered, my voice colder than I intended. That would be lovely, she replied, her voice quiet, as though she were suddenly unsure of herself. She took a seat on the couch, smoothing her hands over her lap. She looked small in my new space, as though she didn't belong here, didn't fit into the life I was building for myself. We went through the motions of domestic normalcy, measuring the coffee grounds, filling the machine, arranging the plates on the table, but the conversation that followed was anything but normal. I've been thinking about when you taught me to ride my bicycle, Sarah began, her voice carrying a wistful tone. You ran alongside me for 3 blocks, even though your back was bothering you. That was 40 years ago. I said nothing. You were always there for me. School plays, graduations, my wedding day. Her eyes filled with tears. You've been the most supportive father any girl could ask for. Her words felt hollow. They were rehearsed as if she had been practicing them for hours. And yet, I felt nothing. No warmth, no love. Just a cold emptiness that had been growing inside me for years. The coffee machine finished brewing with mechanical indifference, but I didn't care. I filled 2 cups, adding cream to hers the way she'd preferred since childhood.
It was
Muscle memory from decades of caretaking. I handed her the cup and sat down across from her, keeping my distance. "When did you last visit me in the hospital after my surgery?" I asked, my voice cutting through the silence. Sarah's performance faltered for a moment. Her face twisted, and she wiped a tear from her eye with the back of her hand. "Dad, I was overwhelmed with work. The kids were having problems. Mark came once. You sent flowers." "That's not fair," I said. "You know how busy things get." Emma drove up from Tacoma twice that week. I saw the truth in Sarah's eyes now. Her guilt was genuine, but it wasn't enough. She had spent too many years taking advantage of my kindness, my resources, and now she wanted to play the victim. She wanted to blame me for the family's troubles. She wanted to make me feel guilty for the things I hadn't done, for the ways I had failed her. I offered reasonable boundaries. I said, my voice calm. She chose manipulation instead. I watched as Sarah struggled with her words, trying to formulate a response, but her defenses were crumbling. "You've become cruel," she whispered, the words sharp but lacking the force they once had. I stared at her, unblinking, my heart no longer torn. "I'm choosing independence over obligation," I said. "You're 48 years old, Sarah. It's time to learn." She broke down then, her tears flowing freely. This was the part of the act I had been waiting for, the genuine breakdown. "I don't know how to do this alone," she sobbed. "I've never had to." I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the quiet street below. "You're 48 years old, Sarah. It's time to learn," I repeated, my words firm. I turned to face her. "I have given you more than enough, more than I should have. And now, you need to learn to take care of yourself." The rest of the conversation passed in a blur, with Sarah pleading for me to help her once more, to bail her out of yet another mess she had gotten herself into. But I was done. I had given enough, sacrificed enough, and it was time for her to face the consequences of her own actions. She left the apartment, her shoulders slumped, her face pale, and I felt no regret, no guilt, just a sense of relief. Later that evening, the weight of the day settled on my shoulders as I sank into the armchair by the window. The apartment felt oddly peaceful, even though the silence carried the echoes of Sarah's tears and Mark's frustrated words. I felt a strange sense of finality, like I was closing a chapter of my life that had been dragging on for far too long. The phone buzzed again. I knew it was Sarah, or perhaps Mark, trying to reach out, trying to make me feel guilty for standing my ground. But this time, I didn't pick it up. I didn't need to hear any more apologies or excuses. I had made my decision. It was time for them to deal with their own mess. The phone rang again, but this time it wasn't Sarah's name on the screen. It was John's. I hesitated before answering. It had been a while since we'd spoken, and I wasn't sure where he stood in all of this. "Grandpa, can I come see you Sunday?" His voice carried a sense of nervousness I hadn't expected. "Mom and Dad are acting weird." A small smile tugged at my lips. John had always been different from the rest of them. He had his faults, his moments of immaturity, but there was a sincerity in his voice, a lack of pretense that I appreciated. "Sure, John, come on over," I said, my voice softening. "I'd love to see you." The following Sunday, when John arrived, I wasn't sure what to expect. His face was familiar, but his body language had changed. Gone was the careless, rebellious teenager. In his place was a young man who seemed to have grown up in the months I had been away from their lives. He still wore the same jeans and flannel shirt, but there was something more grounded about him now. Maybe it was the way he carried himself, or the way his eyes seemed a little more focused. "Hey, Grandpa," he greeted me casually, like nothing had changed, but I could see the uncertainty in his movements. He still had the key to my old house, but instead of just barging in as he had when he was younger, he knocked. That small act surprised me, though I didn't let it show. I motioned for him to come in, offering him a cup of coffee, which he accepted. We sat across from each other in the kitchen, the same kitchen where so many family arguments had taken place over the years. But today, there was an unfamiliar sense of calm. "Mom asked me to convince you to help her," he said, after we'd exchanged pleasantries, his voice low, almost hesitant. I could tell this wasn't easy for him. He had been caught in the middle of his parents' drama, and I could sense the guilt weighing on him. "She's really struggling, Grandpa. She's been working so many shifts lately, and it's been hard." I took a deep breath and set my coffee cup down. "I know, John, I've heard it all, but I can't keep bailing them out. They have to learn to stand on their own 2 feet. His face fell, but I could see he was trying to understand, trying to reconcile the man in front of him with the one he had known before. "Yeah, get it," he said after a moment, rubbing the back of his neck. "I know I've messed up too. I used to just take whatever you gave me without thinking, but I'm trying to change. Grandpa, I'm working at Frank's garage now. I'm earning my own money, learning real skills. I know it's not much, but it's a start." I looked at him closely, studying his face for any signs of insincerity, but there was none. For the first time in a long while, I saw a young man who was willing to take responsibility for his actions. Someone who was ready to put in the fixes we've been chasing all these years. He nodded, his eyes meeting mine with a quiet determination. "I get it now. I've learned the hard way. I just wanted to say thank you for everything, Grandpa. And I'm sorry for the way I treated you before. I wasn't ready to understand, but I think I am now." The words hung in the air between us. I didn't say anything for a while, letting the silence stretch. But inside, I felt a sense of relief. Maybe, just maybe, John was the one who would turn out okay. He wasn't perfect, but he was learning, and that was enough for me. "Well," I said after a moment, "I'm glad to hear that. You've got a lot of potential, John. I just hope you keep using it the right way." We spent the rest of the afternoon talking about his job, his plans for the future, and the struggles he was facing in his personal life. He was still figuring things out, but I could see a path for him now, a path that didn't involve dependency or manipulation. It felt like a small victory for me, and I held on to that feeling as the day wore on. Later that evening, my phone buzzed again, but this time, it was a message from Emma. "Grandpa, can we talk? Mom and Dad are divorcing. She filed papers last week. I think she finally realized Dad's business ideas were just fantasies." I stared at the message for a moment, my mind racing. A divorce. It wasn't surprising, but it still stung. The foundation that had held their family together was crumbling, and there was nothing I could do about it. They had made their choices. They had chosen to depend on me instead of facing the consequences of their actions. And now they were facing those consequences without my help. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I sat back in my chair, looking out at the lake. The evening light danced across the water, turning everything into a golden hue. The quiet settled around me, and for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. As the days passed, I found myself getting used to the rhythm of my new life. I had never realized how much of my time had been consumed by others, by their needs, their expectations, until I had nothing left to give. Now, my days were filled with peaceful routines: coffee in the morning, reading the paper, taking walks through the neighborhood. There was a new sense of freedom in those small moments. I didn't feel rushed anymore. I didn't feel tethered to anyone or anything. But even in my newfound solitude, family still had a way of creeping in. The messages from Sarah continued, each one more desperate than the last. She pleaded for help, for money, for anything that would save her from the consequences of her choices. "Dad, please. The bank is threatening to take the house. Mark's startup failed, and I can't keep up. The kids are in trouble. We need you." The words were all the same patterns, the same manipulation. Each message was like a little poke in my side, a reminder that I had been their safety net for far too long. I deleted them without reading the rest. I had made my decision. They would have to figure it out on their own, just as I had to learn how to live for myself again. Then came the call from Emma. Her voice carried the weight of exhaustion, the kind that seemed too heavy for someone so young. "Grandpa, I'm glad you picked up," she said, her tone carrying a heaviness that told me everything I needed to know. "It's chaos at home. Mom's been working double shifts. She's barely holding it together." I closed my eyes for a moment, trying to process her words. Sarah was burning out, and it wasn't my problem anymore. "I understand why you're angry, but seeing her like this," Emma's voice cracked. "I don't know what to do. I know she's not perfect, but she's my mom." My heart ached for her. I knew she was in a difficult place, caught between loyalty to her mother and the reality that her mother had made terrible choices. "Emma," I said softly, my voice steady, "I know you're trying to help, but sometimes, the best thing you can do for someone is to let them face the consequences of their actions." She was quiet for a long time, and when she spoke again, it was with a new kind of resolve. "I get it, Grandpa, but it still hurts." I knew it did. It hurt for me too, but I couldn't continue to be the crutch they leaned on, only for them to resent me when I didn't give them what they wanted. "We can't keep bailing people out, Emma. Sometimes, they need to feel the weight of their decisions to learn. I know it's hard, but you're strong enough to get through it." The line went silent for a moment, and I could almost hear her thinking, processing my words. "Okay, Grandpa, thanks for listening." The call ended, and I was left with my thoughts. It wasn't easy knowing that Emma was struggling with her family's unraveling, but I knew I had made the right choice. I had done what I could for them. It was time for them to find their own way. The next few days were uneventful. The quietness of my apartment was soothing, almost like the calm before the storm. I continued my daily routine: morning coffee, a walk in the park, checking emails, and keeping to myself. It was a simple life, but it was mine, and I was learning to appreciate it more than I had ever appreciated anything before. But, as always, there was a phone call that changed things. This time, it was John again. "Grandpa, I need to talk to you." His voice was tentative, unsure. I could hear the nervousness in his words. "I've been working at Frank's garage for 2 months now, and I've been thinking a lot about what you said. About real work, about building something lasting." I smiled faintly. There was something different about the way he was speaking now. It wasn't the same John who had stormed out of my life months ago. This was someone who had begun to understand the value of hard work, the value of earning his own way. "I've been trying to put my life together," he continued. "I was thinking, maybe I could take you out to dinner, just the two of us. I want to hear about your life, Grandpa. Hear about what you did when you were my age." It was a simple offer, but it meant a lot more than the words he spoke. It meant he was trying to bridge the gap, to make amends for the way he had treated me before. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. I'd like that, John, I said, my voice softening. Dinner sounds good. We made plans to meet at a local diner the following weekend. It was a small step, but it felt significant. Maybe, just maybe, there was hope for the next generation. Saturday afternoon arrived, and I drove to the diner, my thoughts drifting as I passed the familiar streets. When I walked in, I saw John sitting at a booth near the window, a cup of coffee in front of him. He looked up and smiled when he saw me, and for the first time in a long while, I felt the weight in my chest lighten. "Hey, Grandpa," he greeted me, his voice warm and genuine. We shook hands, and I took a seat across from him. "So, I've been thinking about my future," he said, his tone serious now. "I've been working at Frank's garage, and he wants to promote me. He says I've got potential, but I need to get my life on track. I've been messing around for too long, and I don't want to be like my dad." I nodded, impressed by his self-awareness. "That's good, John. It sounds like you're taking responsibility for your life, and that's what matters most." He grinned, looking almost shy. "I'm starting to get it, Grandpa. I want to build something for myself, not just for me, but for the people I care about." We spent the rest of the afternoon talking about life, about work, about the things that mattered. For the first time in years, I felt like I was connecting with someone in a way that wasn't transactional. It was real. And as I left the diner, that afternoon, I realized that maybe, just maybe, this was what I had been missing all along. Genuine connection, without strings attached. The days that followed felt like they were unfolding in slow motion, each moment a quiet reassurance that I had made the right decision. John's words from that afternoon stayed with me, and for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful. It wasn't that I expected everything to change overnight, but there was a subtle shift in the air, like the first signs of spring after a long, bitter winter. I continued with my routines, enjoying the small freedoms I had earned. I spent my mornings in the kitchen, making coffee, reading the paper, and sometimes just sitting in silence, letting my thoughts wander. The park nearby had become a favorite spot. I found a bench under a large oak tree, the branches stretching above me, offering shade and peace. It was peace. It was my space, my time to reflect, to simply exist without the weight of anyone else's expectations pressing down on me. But family had a way of showing up when least expected. It was a Wednesday afternoon when Sarah texted me again. I hadn't heard from her in over a week. "Dad, please, we can't do this without you. The bank is threatening to foreclose. Mark's credit is shot. We're running out of time." I stared at the message for a long time, my finger hovering over the reply button. It was tempting to respond, to offer help, to fix things like I had done so many times before. But I knew what I had to do. I couldn't be the one to solve their problems anymore. They had to face the consequences of their actions. Instead of replying to the message, I turned off my phone and went for a walk. The streets of my neighborhood felt different now, cleaner, clearer. I wasn't burdened by the constant weight of responsibility that had consumed me for years. As I walked, I felt lighter, freer, and I realized how much of my life I had spent carrying everyone else's problems on my shoulders. I passed the local bookstore and decided to step inside. The cool air hit me as I opened the door, the scent of fresh paper and leather-bound books filling my senses. It was a small store, cozy, with shelves that seemed to stretch on forever. I browsed through the aisles, pulling books off the shelves, letting my fingers trace the spines, and I felt a sense of calm wash over me. I came across a collection of poems by Mary Oliver, a poet I had come to admire in recent years. I flipped through the pages, reading a few lines that resonated deeply. One poem stood out. "Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life?" The question echoed in my mind, and I realized how much I had been giving up, how much of my life I had spent living for others. I bought the book, and as I left the bookstore, I tucked it under my arm, the weight of it grounding me. That night, I sat on my couch with a cup of tea, reading Mary Oliver's poems, and I felt a sense of peace that I had never experienced before. It was the quiet kind of peace, the kind that comes when you finally stop fighting battles that aren't yours to fight, the kind that comes when you let go of the expectations and demands that have been placed on you, and start living for yourself the next day. I received a call from Emma. Her voice was hesitant, as though she wasn't sure what to say. "Grandpa, I don't know if you're still upset with me, but I need to talk to you." I could hear the exhaustion in her voice, and it made my heart ache. She had been caught in the middle of everything for so long, torn between loyalty to her mother and the truth of what had been happening. "Of course, Emma," I said, my voice calm. "What's going on?" She hesitated before speaking. "Mom and Dad, they're getting divorced. She filed the papers last week. It's been a long time coming, I guess, but I don't know. I feel like everything's falling apart, and I don't know how to handle it." I sat back in my chair, listening to her, understanding the pain in her words. I knew this wasn't easy for her. It wasn't easy for anyone. "I'm sorry, Emma," I said, my voice soft. "I know this is a hard time for you, but you have to remember, you're not alone in this." "I know," she said quietly. I wish things had been different. I wish I could have done more, or helped more, but I'm just, tired, Grandpa. I nodded, though she couldn't see me. It's okay to be tired. You've been carrying a lot, but you have to let go of the guilt. You can't fix everything, Emma. Sometimes, you just have to let things be, and trust that the right path will reveal itself. She was quiet for a long time, and I could hear the quiet rustling of her clothes, like she was shifting where she was sitting. I'm trying to learn that, she said. I really am. We talked for a while longer, about life, about the changes in the family, and about how she was trying to move forward. When the conversation ended, I felt a small but noticeable weight lift off my shoulders. I couldn't fix everything, but maybe, just maybe, Emma was starting to see the value of standing on her own 2 feet as well. The following weeks felt like a delicate balance between maintaining my newfound independence and occasionally being pulled back into the chaos that had once defined my life. The phone would buzz with messages from Sarah, her pleas becoming more desperate with each passing day. Dad, the bank is giving us a final warning. If you could just help us out this last time, we can fix everything. I promise we'll do better next time. But each time, I found myself shutting the phone off. Resisting the temptation to fall back into the role of their savior, I thought back to the years I had spent being the one they leaned on, the one they turned to whenever they needed something. And yet, when it came time for them to return the favor, to show gratitude, they had turned their backs on me. They had expected too much, and I had given too much. But I wasn't going to make that mistake again. The air felt different now, the weight of responsibility no longer pressing on my shoulders. I didn't feel guilty for choosing my peace, my freedom. In fact, the more time passed, the more I realized how much of my life I had spent living for others, living in a way that was not my own. I woke up one morning, the sun streaming through the window, and I realized that for the first time in a long time, I was truly happy. I wasn't happy because of what I had, but because I had finally let go of the things that weighed me down. I was living life for me now, but just as I had started to settle into this peace, life had a way of reminding me of the things I had left behind. The next phone call was from John. Grandpa, I know we haven't talked much lately, but I need your help, he said. His voice sounded different this time, more mature, like he had learned something in the time that had passed since we last spoke. What's going on, John? I asked, my tone softening. I've been working at Frank's garage for a couple of months now. It's hard, but I'm learning a lot. But I'm in a bit of a bind, he said, his voice tinged with uncertainty. I need a loan, Grandpa, just $3,000. I can pay it back, but I need it to cover rent and some other stuff. I paused, the words hanging in the air. For a moment, I felt the familiar pull, the urge to help him, to be the one he turned to in times of need. But I knew better now. John, I said, my voice steady, I can't help you this time. There was a long silence on the other end. I could feel his disappointment, the weight of my words sinking in, but I wasn't going to enable him again. I couldn't. You have to learn to stand on your own, John. I've given you enough help over the years. Now it's time for you to do the work. It won't be easy, but that's how you grow. That's how you build a future that's yours, not something someone else gave you. John was quiet for a while, and I could hear him shifting on the other end of the line. When he finally spoke, his voice had a new tone to it, one I hadn't heard before. I get it, Grandpa. I really do. I've been trying to make changes. I don't want to keep asking you for help. I just didn't know where else to turn. I know, John, and I'm proud of you for wanting to make those changes, I said, my voice softer now. But this is something you have to do for yourself. You've got the skills, you've got the drive, now you need to learn how to trust yourself. We talked a little longer, and when the conversation ended, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. John wasn't there yet, but he was getting closer, and that was enough for me. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I had made the right decision. The next few weeks passed in a blur of small moments. I spent my days continuing my routines, reading, walking in the park, enjoying the quiet. But there were still moments of reflection, moments when I thought about the family I had left behind. I had no idea what the future held for them, but I knew I couldn't keep carrying them. I had to let them go, and that was the hardest part. Evening, as I sat on my deck, watching the sunset over Lake Washington, I got another call. It was from Emma. Her voice was hesitant, unsure. Grandpa, I don't know what to say. Mom and Dad are getting a divorce, and everything's falling apart. I can't handle it. I sat up straighter, my heart sinking as I listened. I'm sorry to hear that, Emma, I said quietly. I know this is hard, but sometimes people need to face the consequences of their actions, and as much as it hurts, you can't fix it for them. But I feel like I'm losing. Everything, she said, her voice breaking. I don't know what to do anymore. I paused, searching for the right words. You don't have to carry all of this, Emma. You've been strong for so long, but it's okay to let go. You can't keep holding everyone else up. It's time to start living for yourself. She was quiet for a while, and I could feel her processing what I said. Finally, she spoke again. I don't want to keep making the same mistakes. I want to learn, Grandpa. I want to do better. That's all you can do, I replied. Learn from it and move forward. You'll be stronger for it. As the days stretched into weeks, the quiet rhythm of my life continued. I spent my mornings with a cup of coffee, reading, and sometimes sitting by the lake, watching the water ripple gently under the early morning light. It was a life I had come to cherish, one without the constant demands of family and the weight of unmet expectations. Yet, despite the peace I had cultivated, there was always a lingering awareness that family, particularly my daughter, was never far from my thoughts. One afternoon, as I walked through the park, I got a message from Emma. She had sent it late in the morning, but I hadn't checked my phone until now. "Grandpa, can I come over today? I need to talk to you." There was something different about this message. It wasn't an emergency. It wasn't a plea for money or help. It felt like she was reaching out to me for something more, for guidance, perhaps, or simply for someone to listen. I replied almost immediately, "Sure, come by any time." By the time Emma arrived, the sun was low in the sky, casting long shadows across the living room floor. She looked a bit older than when I had last seen her. There was a maturity in her eyes, but also an exhaustion. Her hair was pulled back in a loose ponytail, and she wore a soft, faded sweater that seemed to carry the weight of the last few months. She held a small bag in her hand, and as she stepped inside, she gave me a small, uncertain smile. "Hey, Grandpa," she said, her voice soft. "I wasn't sure if you'd be around." "I'm always around." "Emma," I replied, motioning to the chair across from me. "Come sit." She sat down, placing the bag beside her, but she didn't open it. She seemed to be gathering her thoughts, unsure of how to begin. I let the silence stretch between us, giving her time. The clock ticked softly on the wall, the only sound in the room. After what felt like an eternity, Emma spoke. "I've been thinking a lot about everything, about Mom, about Dad, about what's happened to our family. And I realized something. I've spent so much time trying to fix things, trying to make everyone happy, that I forgot to take care of myself." Her words hit me harder than I expected. I had known for a while that Emma was struggling, but hearing her finally say it out loud was different. It felt like a breakthrough, something I had been hoping for, that one day, she would realize the importance of her own well-being. "I know," I said quietly. "You've always put everyone else first, Emma, but that's not sustainable. People need to take responsibility for their own lives, including your mom and dad. You can't fix everything for them. It's time for you to start living for yourself." She nodded slowly, but I could see the conflict in her eyes. She had spent so many years caring for others that letting go, even just a little, felt like a betrayal. "I've been trying to figure it out," she said, the weight of her words hanging in the air, "but it's hard. I've always been the one to hold everything together, even when I didn't know how. I know it's hard, but you can't keep carrying everything. You've already done more than enough, Emma. It's time for them to stand on their own feet, just like you're learning to do, and you need to start doing the same. Taking care of yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary." She sat there for a long while, her gaze fixed on the floor, and I didn't interrupt. I knew she needed time to process. Emma had always been strong, but strength wasn't about never breaking. It was about knowing when to step back and take care of yourself. I had spent so many years teaching her the importance of selflessness, but now it was time for her to learn the importance of boundaries. "I don't know if I'm ready for this," she finally said, her voice shaky. "I don't know if I can stop trying to fix things." "You don't have to do it all at once," I said gently. "It's a process, but it's a start, and that's what matters." Emma sat in silence for a while, her hands resting in her lap. I watched her, noticing how much she had grown, not just physically, but emotionally. The girl I had raised was no longer here, and in her place was a young woman who was just beginning to understand her own strength. Finally, she took a deep breath and looked up at me. "I'm sorry, Grandpa. I didn't realize how much I was relying on you, how much I was expecting from you. I've been taking you for granted, and I didn't even know it." I smiled softly, reaching out to pat her hand. "You don't need to apologize, Emma. We all have our moments, but you're learning now, and that's all I can ask for." She smiled back at me, a flicker of relief in her eyes. "Thank you for being patient with me, for understanding. Always," I said simply. Later that evening, as Emma left my apartment and stepped out into the cool night, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. She was learning, she was growing, and that was enough for me. I didn't need her to be perfect, but I needed her to understand that she had to take care of herself. The following weekend, I found myself once again sitting by the lake, the early morning sun warming my face. The water shimmered gently in the distance, and for the first time in a long time, I felt completely at peace. The last few months had been filled with difficult choices, with painful realizations, but I had come out the other side stronger, freer, and more in control of my own life. I had learned that love wasn't about giving endlessly without expectation. It was about setting boundaries, about knowing when to say no, and about taking care of yourself. And as the sun rose higher in the sky, I felt a quiet satisfaction in knowing that, for the first time in my life, I was living on my own terms. The days rolled by with a familiar sense of rhythm, but now the rhythm felt right. I was in control, not of anyone else's life, but of my own. The calls from Sarah became less frequent, though she still tried to reach out, her voice always laced with desperation. But this time, I ignored them. I couldn't keep being the one to fix things for her. I had made my decision, and I wasn't going back. I spent my mornings on the deck of my apartment, sipping coffee as the city came alive below. I could see the busy streets, the people rushing to their jobs, and for once, I felt content with my own pace. There was a certain peace in knowing that I was no longer tied to the chaos that had once consumed me. I wasn't trying to live up to anyone's expectations anymore. I was simply existing, breathing in the fresh air, and finding solace in the small moments. It was a Tuesday when I received a message from John. This time, it wasn't a request for money, nor was it a plea for help. "Grandpa, I got promoted at Frank's garage," the message began. "I'm moving up. I just wanted to let you know." The pride in his words was evident, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a swell of emotion in my chest. I didn't respond right away, letting the news settle in. I was proud of him, proud that he was finding his footing. He had started out unsure of himself, but now, he was on his way to something more. Something real. Later that evening, I decided to call him. "John," I said when he picked up, my voice warm with approval. "I just got your message. That's great news. I'm proud of you." He paused for a moment, the silence on the other end feeling heavier than usual. "Thanks, Grandpa," he said finally. "I wouldn't have gotten here without you. Without you showing me what it means to work hard. I'm trying to get my life on track. You're doing it, John." "One step at a time," I replied, "and that's all that matters. Keep working at it. You'll get where you need to go." We talked for a while longer, catching up on his work, his plans, and his progress. I could hear the maturity in his voice, the change that had come over him since our last conversation. I could see him growing into the man he was meant to be, one who would take responsibility for his actions and not rely on others to carry him. After I hung up, I sat there for a moment, reflecting on the journey I had taken to get to this point. I had walked away from a life of constant giving, from the overwhelming demands of family, and I had found something more: peace. The peace that came with knowing I had done what I could, and now it was time for them to learn their own lessons. The next few weeks were filled with more of the same: peaceful mornings, quiet evenings, and occasional phone calls from Emma. She was still trying to navigate the fallout from her parents' divorce, but she was stronger now, more grounded in her own sense of self. The guilt that had once consumed her was slowly fading, replaced with the understanding that she couldn't fix everything, especially not the broken parts of her family. One evening, as I sat on the deck watching the sun set over the lake, I received a text from Sarah. For a moment, I debated whether or not to open it, but something inside me told me I had to, that this time, it was different. "Dad," the message began, "I know I've made mistakes. I know I've taken you for granted, and I'm sorry. I don't expect anything from you anymore. I just wanted to tell you that I'm trying to change. I'm trying to fix things for myself." I sat there, staring at the screen for a long time, my heart torn. Part of me wanted to reply, to reach out to her, to offer some kind of reassurance. But I knew it wasn't the right time. She had to make these changes on her own, just as I had made mine. Instead of replying, I set the phone down, letting the message sit unanswered. There was no need to rush. I had learned that some things couldn't be fixed with a quick fix or a simple gesture. Sometimes, the hardest thing to do was to let go and allow people the space to grow. The next few months passed with a gentle ease that I hadn't known for years. I spent more time with friends from the Veterans Center, and Mary and I had started spending more time together as well. We had discovered a rhythm, a quiet companionship that didn't demand anything from either of us. She had her life, I had mine, and when we came together, it was with respect and understanding. It was in the small moments with her that I realized I was no longer just filling the empty space left by my family. I was filling it with something real, something that was built on mutual respect and shared experiences. Mary had her own independence, and she respected mine. One evening, as we sat on the deck enjoying the sunset, Mary turned to me with a smile. "You've come a long way, Alex," she said softly. "You've learned to live for yourself." I smiled back, the weight of those words settling on my shoulders. "I've had to," I replied. "It wasn't easy, but I'm finally learning how to live for me." The peace I had found in my new life was deeper than I had imagined. It wasn't just about escaping the past. It was about building something new. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting its golden glow across the lake, I knew I had made the right choice. I was no longer just a part of someone else's story. I was writing my own. The quiet contentment of my days continued. I had learned to embrace the stillness, to appreciate the slow passage of time without the chaos that once surrounded me. I was no longer defined by my role in my family's struggles. I was simply Alex, a man who had lived through hardships, who had given much, and who, in the end, had chosen peace over obligation. As the seasons shifted, so did my understanding of family. I had let go of the expectations I had carried for so long, and in return, I found that my relationships began to shift as well. Not all at once, but gradually, like the way a river carves its path through a canyon over time. The process was slow, but it was real. One evening, as I sat in my cozy living room with a cup of tea, I received a call from Emma. Her voice was calmer now, though there was still a certain heaviness in it. Grandpa, I'm trying. I'm really trying to make things right. I know it's going to take time, but I don't want to keep making the same mistakes. I nodded, though she couldn't see me. I know, Emma, and I'm proud of you for trying. That's all anyone can do, try, and learn from the mistakes. I've been spending a lot of time thinking about everything. About Mom, about Dad, about how I've been living my life, she said, and I realize now how much I've let their problems become my problems. I paused, letting her words sink in. It's not easy, Emma, but you can't carry their burdens. You have to take care of yourself first. You've already done more than enough for them. Now it's time to do something for you. There was a brief silence on the other end, and I could almost hear her nodding, though she was miles away. I know. I'm working on it, Grandpa. I'm learning to stand up for myself. I'm proud of you, I repeated, my voice firm and encouraging. It's not about being perfect. It's about finding the strength to say no when you need to. The call ended, and I sat there for a long while, reflecting on the journey Emma had made. She had always been my little girl, but now, she was learning to be her own woman. It wasn't easy, but the fact that she was trying gave me hope. Hope that, even after all the turmoil, she could still carve out a life for herself, free from the burdens she had once carried. A few weeks later, John called me again. This time, his voice was different, more confident, more steady. Grandpa, he said, I've been working at Frank's for almost 6 months now, and I'm learning a lot. I've been saving up, and I've got a plan. I'm moving into my own place next month. I felt a warm sense of pride fill my chest. That's great news, John, I said, my voice full of approval. I'm proud of you. You're taking control of your life. Yeah, I finally feel like I'm getting there, he replied, a hint of satisfaction in his tone. It's not perfect, but I'm doing the work. I'm learning what it means to take responsibility for my own future. Good, I said, smiling to myself. That's the most important part. John, you're learning, and that's what matters. Keep going. We talked for a while longer, catching up on his life and his plans. It wasn't easy for him, but I could hear the determination in his voice. He was no longer the lost young man who had come to me for help. He was growing, finding his own way, and that was all I had ever wanted for him. A few weeks later, I found myself sitting with Mary on a bench in the park, the evening sun casting a golden glow over the lake. We were quiet, just enjoying the peace of the moment. Mary had become a steady presence in my life. Someone who understood the value of independence, someone who didn't expect anything from me except the same respect I offered in return. I've been thinking a lot about the future, I said, breaking the silence. About what I want in these years ahead. I've spent so much of my life living for others, and I don't regret it, but I've learned that it's okay to live for myself. Now, to build something that's mine, without the weight of everyone else's expectations. Mary smiled, her warm eyes reflecting the same understanding that had drawn me to her in the first place. I think that's the most important thing, Alex. You've spent your life taking care of others. Now, it's your time. I nodded, feeling the truth of her words settle deep in my bones. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was exactly where I needed to be. I had spent years being the one who always gave, the one who always helped, the one who always put others before myself. And now, I was learning how to take care of me. The sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows over the park, and for a brief moment, everything felt perfect. The world was still and peaceful, and I had found a sense of contentment that I had been searching for my entire life. The weeks passed by, with a sense of ease I hadn't known in years. I continued to enjoy my quiet routines, savoring the calm that had become my new normal. I still checked in on Emma and John from time to time, offering support when they needed it, but without the weight of obligation. I had learned how to offer love and guidance without being pulled into the chaos of their lives. One afternoon, as I sat in my favorite chair, reading a book on the deck, I heard the soft ring of my doorbell. I wasn't expecting anyone, but when I opened the door, I found Sarah standing there. Her eyes were tired, her face drawn from the stress of everything she had been through. But there was something different about her. She looked less defensive, less angry. Dad, she said quietly, almost hesitantly. I know I've messed up. I've hurt you, and I don't know how to fix it, but I'm trying. I'm really trying to change. I didn't say anything at first. I just looked at her, the woman who had once been my little girl, now standing before me with the weight of everything she had gone through. There was no anger in me anymore, just a quiet understanding. I could see that she had hit a turning point, that she was finally starting to see the damage her actions had caused, not just to me, but to herself as well. I'm sorry, she continued, her voice trembling slightly. I took you for granted. I always thought you would just keep giving, and I never stopped to think about what that cost you. I nodded slowly, my gaze softening. It's not about the money, Sarah. It never was. It's about respect, about understanding that I can't keep giving without receiving something in return. I gave you everything I had, but I didn't ask for enough in return, not because I didn't love you, but because I didn't know how to ask for more. She swallowed hard, a tear slipping down her cheek. I know. I should have appreciated you more. I should have seen how much you were sacrificing for us. You're right, I said quietly, but the past is gone now. What matters is what happens next. I can't keep carrying the weight of your mistakes, Sarah. You have to carry your own weight, just like I had to. She nodded, wiping the tear away with the back of her hand. I understand, Dad. I really do. I'm not asking you to fix everything. I just wanted to tell you that I'm trying to do better. For myself and for the kids. I saw the sincerity in her eyes, and for the first time in a long time, I believed her. She wasn't asking for forgiveness, but she was showing me that she was willing to work toward it, and that was enough. I'm proud of you, Sarah, I said, my voice calm but firm. But you need to keep moving forward. Don't go backward. I've given you all the support I can. Now, you need to stand on your own 2 feet. She nodded again, a faint smile playing at the corners of her mouth. I will, Dad, I promise. She stayed for a while, and we talked about everything that had happened. It wasn't a conversation filled with apologies or excuses. It was just 2 people who had lived through their own struggles, trying to understand each other once again. And for the first time in years, I felt a sense of closure with her. It wasn't a perfect resolution, but it was enough. The next few months passed peacefully. I continued to work on myself, focusing on my health, my hobbies, and spending time with friends. Mary and I spent more time together, enjoying the quiet companionship that had become such a comforting part of my life. We had both learned the value of independence, but we had also found that being together didn't mean losing ourselves. Then, one afternoon, as I sat at the park watching the ducks glide across the water, I got a text from Emma. It was short and simple, but it brought a smile to my face. I just wanted to thank you, Grandpa, for everything. I know I haven't always been the easiest, but I'm learning. I'm getting there. I sat there for a long time, reading her message over and over again. She was learning. She was finding her way. And that was enough. The phone rang later that evening. It was John. Hey, Grandpa. I just wanted to say thanks again. I finally got my own place. It's small, but it's mine. I'm figuring things out, one step at a time. My heart swelled with pride. That's great, John. I'm really proud of you. Keep it up. You're doing it. I will. Thanks for everything, Grandpa. I won't let you down. You won't. John, I know you won't. And as I hung up the phone, I realized that, in the end, I had done what I set out to do. I had learned to take care of myself, to set boundaries, to stop being the one who always gave and gave without receiving anything in return. And in doing so, I had created the space for my family to grow on their own, to make their own mistakes and learn from them, to finally take responsibility for their lives. It wasn't always easy, and it wasn't always smooth, but it was real, and that's what mattered. The sun was beginning to set, casting a warm orange glow over the lake. The air was cool, and the breeze carried with it the promise of a new day. I took a deep breath and closed my eyes, letting the peace of the moment wash over me. For the first time in a long time, I felt at home in my own life. Someone who was ready to put in the work. That's good, John, I said, my voice thick with emotion. Real work builds character. It builds something lasting, not like the quick,